What should Parliament and MPs be doing during the ex-ante stages? And how does this benefit parliamentarians and the public at large? This is the second video of a three-part series created by the Caribbean Development Bank. It considers what parliamentarians should ask before any money is spent. The ex-ante or budget planning and allocation stages is where the Parliament exercises its power of the purse. Some common challenges that affect the role and impact of the Parliament in the budget process include the extent of constitutional powers, time allotted for budget scrutiny, access to relevant and high-quality information, and the extent of the Parliament's independence from the executive. International good practice suggests that a Parliament requires a minimum of 3 months for effective consideration of the annual budget. The more time the Parliament has to review the draft budget, the greater its overall potential influence. However, very few small jurisdictions meet the 3-month requirement. Another key issue is whether there are resources to assist financial scrutiny. In many jurisdictions, the Parliament lacks the capacity to examine the budget in detail and provide analysis on fiscal policy to assist members. Internationally, there is a trend towards increasing the analytical capacity of Parliament. While it is unrealistic to expect many small legislatures to create independent budget offices, as found in the USA, an option is to recruit a full-time parliamentary budget advisor to offer independent advice. This has proved useful in Trinidad and Tobago. MPs need to check that the budget reflects important international commitments, such as the SDGs, gender equality, and climate change. Budgets impact differently on women and men. Equality and sustainability must be considered when planning expenditure allocations. Good practice here would be a gender-based analysis of the budget. MPs should always ask whether impact assessments have been conducted. Commitments to combat gender inequality need to be supported by adequate budgetary allocations. Economic resilience in the Caribbean is impacted by the frequency of natural disasters and climate change. To counter this, the Parliament should ensure that budget allocations are made for disaster risk reduction and coping with climate change. MPs should ask questions on: has the budget been prepared to reflect the government's fiscal and debt strategies? What are the assumptions behind the growth forecast? How do the government's growth figures compare to independent forecasts? How much of the proposed budget is committed and how much is discretionary? Are there sufficient reserves to deal with unforeseen circumstances? A government must ask Parliament for the public money they want to spend. Estimates are documents setting out each department's annual spending for approval by MPs. Expenditure plans must be sufficiently detailed for Parliament to understand what the money will be spent on. In order to review the estimates effectively, MPs need narrative information explaining the goals and objectives of the proposed expenditure. They must be confident that commitments have been evaluated to assess value for money. This will help the Parliament hold the government to account in future for the effectiveness of that expenditure. The estimates should also relate to the government's medium-term policies and include effective analysis of global and domestic macroeconomic trends. There are core questions to pose when examining proposals for further expenditure. Why is there a need for further expenditure? What is the timescale of this expenditure? What will this planned expenditure be used for? What are the significant changes in spending plans to the previous budget? What are the reasons for the policy change behind large increases or decreases in expenditure? MPs need to be mindful that too high expenditure can lead to fraudulent activity. They also need to check whether the total planned expenditure is in excess of total income available. Key questions to ask here include: does the government have sufficient resources to achieve their commitments for the financial year? Are there new sources of revenue? How was the yield from the new sources of revenue determined? In many jurisdictions, the Parliament meets as a committee of the whole House, which consists of all MPs, to consider the estimates. While all members are involved, a committee of the whole is less likely to provide the necessary in-depth examination that a smaller budget committee would. Small cross-party committees are less likely to feature the partisan discussions that occur elsewhere in Parliament. The key takeaways are that the budget authorization phase is where the Parliament exercises its power of the purse and ensures the rule of law in public finance. Common challenges that affect the role and impact of the Parliament in the budget process include the extent of constitutional powers, time allotted for budget scrutiny, access to relevant and high-quality information, and the extent of the Parliament's political independence from the executive. There are a number of key questions that MPs can ask when scrutinizing proposed budgets to ensure governments are held to account for the use of taxpayers' money. Our next video in the series will focus on the financial reporting, external audit and evaluation, or ex-post phases of the budget process. Our previous video, using the national budget cycle to best effect, can be found here.